The plane shook violently. Passengers screamed. The pilot was unconscious. Everyone thought they were going to die. Then a quiet woman in seat 34A stood up. Nobody knew she had flown fighter jets in the Navy for 10 years. She walked toward the cockpit. This was her moment. Chen sat in seat 34A, looking out at the endless blue sky. She was just another passenger on Flight 447, wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater. Her reading glasses sat on her lap. A cup of coffee cooled on her tray table. The man next to her had tried to make conversation earlier. Business or vacation, he'd asked. Just visiting family, Maya had said with a small smile. Nothing more. That was her way now. Short answers. No details. No stories about her past. The plane was big, carrying 246 people across the Pacific Ocean. It was supposed to be a normal 11-hour flight from Tokyo to Los Angeles. Most passengers were watching movies or sleeping. Some were reading. A few were working on laptops. Maya wasn't doing any of those things. She was just looking out the window, lost in her own thoughts. She had been living a quiet life for the past 5 years. She worked at a library in Portland. She had a small apartment. She went hiking on weekends. She had friends who knew nothing about her past life. And that was exactly how she wanted it. But inside her chest, there was always something else. A restlessness. Like a part of her was still up there in the sky, doing things her friends could never imagine. She pushed those thoughts away. That life was over. The flight attendant walked by, smiling at passengers. Everything seemed calm. Everything seemed safe. Then Maya felt it. A small vibration. Just a tiny shake in the floor beneath her feet. She sat up straighter. Her body suddenly alert. The vibration came again. And then the plane tilted slightly to the left, then back to the right. Maya's eyes narrowed. She looked around the cabin. Most passengers hadn't noticed anything. But she had. She knew planes. She knew how they should feel. And this wasn't right. The flight attendants were still smiling, but Maya could see tension in their eyes. They were noticing it too. The plane was acting strange. Another passenger a few rows ahead turned to his wife. "Did you feel that?" "Feel what?" she asked. "The plane, it moved funny." The wife laughed nervously. "You're imagining things." But he wasn't. Maya knew he wasn't. The plane shuddered again. This time, more people noticed. Conversation stopped. People looked around, confused. A flight attendant picked up the phone to call the cockpit. Maya watched her face change as she listened. The attendant hung up and whispered something to another crew member. Maya's heart started beating faster. Something was definitely wrong. She had been in dangerous situations before. Many times. But that was in another life. A life where she wore a uniform and flew jets off the deck of an aircraft carrier in the middle of the ocean. That was Commander Maya Chen. That was the woman who had landed fighter planes on moving ships at night during storms. That was the woman who had flown combat missions and saved her crew when things went terribly wrong. But that woman didn't exist anymore. She had left the Navy 6 years ago. She had walked away from all of it. Now she was just Maya. Just a librarian. Just a regular person. The plane tilted again, harder this time. A woman across the aisle grabbed her armrest. "What's happening?" No one answered her. Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Don't get involved," she told herself. "They have pilots. They know what they're doing." But even as she thought it, she knew something was very wrong. The movements of the plane weren't normal. They were the kind of movements that meant the pilots were fighting with something. Fighting with the controls. She had felt this before. In a fighter jet over the Pacific. When her hydraulics had failed and she'd had to land on a carrier deck using only manual controls. The memory flashed through her mind. The fear. The focus. The training taking over when her mind wanted to panic. She opened her eyes. The plane was still shaking. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself. "They've got this." But she wasn't sure they did. Then everything changed. The nose of the plane dropped. Hard. Not a gentle descent. Not a normal turn. The plane pitched forward violently, like someone had grabbed the nose and pulled it straight down toward the ocean. Screams erupted throughout the cabin. Maya's stomach flew up into her throat as the plane began to fall. Not fly. Fall. Overhead compartments burst open. Bags flew forward. Phones and tablets sailed through the air. The coffee cup on Maya's tray launched forward and splashed against the seat in front of her. The plane was pointed almost straight down now. The angle was so steep that Maya was pressed hard against her seatbelt. She could see out her window. Instead of seeing blue sky, she saw blue ocean. Getting closer. Fast. People were screaming. Crying. Praying. A child somewhere behind her was calling for his mother. "Brace! Brace! Brace!" The captain's voice exploded through the speakers. He sounded terrified. "We have a control malfunction. Brace for impact." Maya looked at the seat in front of her. At the safety card showing the brace position. At the horrified faces of passengers around her. They were going to die. All of them. The plane was falling from 41,000 feet and there was nothing anyone could do. Except. Maya's training kicked in like a switch had been flipped in her brain. She knew this situation. She had trained for this exact scenario. Not in a big commercial plane, but the physics were the same. The problem was the same. Runaway stabilizer. The tail of the plane was forcing the nose down and the pilots couldn't stop it. She had dealt with this before. In a fighter jet. When her controls had jammed and she'd had 90 seconds to fix it before she hit the water. She had survived because she knew what to do. And she could save everyone on this plane. But it meant revealing everything. Everything she'd hidden for 6 years. Maya looked around at the passengers. At the man next to her gripping his armrest so hard his knuckles were white. At the flight attendant pressed against the wall, crying. At the mother 3 rows up holding her little girl tight. 246 people. 246 people about to die. She unbuckled her seatbelt. Moving was almost impossible. The plane was angled so steeply downward that walking up the aisle was like climbing a steep hill. Gravity was pulling everything toward the front of the plane. Maya grabbed seat backs and pulled herself forward. Step by step. Fighting against the angle. "Sit down," a passenger yelled at her. "You're going to die." She ignored him. "Ma'am. Ma'am, please sit down." A flight attendant reached for her. Maya pushed past her. The plane was shaking violently now. The metal screaming. The engines roaring as the pilots fought to regain control. Maya could see the cockpit door ahead. The reinforced door that had been locked since 9/11. The door that was supposed to keep everyone out. She reached it and pounded on it with her fist. Hard. "Open the door," she shouted. Nothing happened. She pounded again. "I'm a Navy pilot. Open this door right now." Still nothing. The plane shuddered. They were still falling. Still dropping toward the ocean below. She pounded one more time, screaming with every bit of authority she'd learned in 12 years of military service. "I'm Commander Maya Chen, U.S. Navy, carrier qualified. You have a runaway stabilizer. I know how to fix this. Open the door now or we hit the ocean in 45 seconds. There was a pause. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then she heard the lock click. The door opened. The cockpit was chaos. The captain and first officer were both pulling back on their control columns with all their strength. Sweat was pouring down their faces. The control panel was lit up with red warning lights. Through the windscreen, Maya could see nothing but ocean. Getting closer. Fast. "Who the hell are you?" the captain shouted without looking back. "I'm the person who's going to save your lives," Maya said. She stepped forward and grabbed the back of the captain's seat, looking at the instruments. She saw it immediately. The stabilizer trim indicator showed full nose down. The pilots were fighting it, but their control inputs weren't working. "You're fighting the column," Maya said. "Stop. You're making it worse. Lady, I don't know who you are, but listen to me." Maya's voice cut through the cockpit like a knife. It was her command voice. The voice that had ordered people around on aircraft carriers. The voice that demanded to be obeyed. Both pilots looked at her in shock. "You have a runaway stabilizer trim," Maya said quickly. "Your autopilot trim system is commanding nose down and overriding your inputs. You need to disconnect it completely. Right now." "We already tried," the first officer started. "No, you tried disconnecting the autopilot. That's not enough. You need to disconnect the entire trim system. The switch is there." She pointed. "Flip it. Now." The captain hesitated for only a second. Then he reached forward and flipped the switch. "Now manual trim only," Maya said. "Deploy speed brakes. Symmetric. Both sides." "That'll make us fall faster," the first officer said. "No, it'll give you pitch authority. The speed brakes will create drag at the back of the plane and help pull the nose up. Do it." The captain deployed the speed brakes. "Throttles to idle," Maya continued. "You need to reduce the nose-down moment from the engines. But we need power to do it." The captain pulled the throttles back to idle. The plane shuddered. The dive angle was so steep they were almost vertical. "Now," Maya said, her voice calm and steady. "Manual trim. Nose up. Use the trim wheel. Slow, steady pressure. Don't overcorrect." The captain grabbed the trim wheel and started turning it. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. They kept falling. Then, slowly, the nose began to rise. "Just a little. Keep going," Maya said. "Steady. Don't stop." The nose rose another degree. Then another. The ocean was still rushing up at them, but slower now. "Speed brakes are working," the first officer said, his voice shaking. "We're getting pitch authority." "Good," Maya said. "Keep the trim going. Steady pressure." The nose rose more. The plane was still in a steep dive, but not vertical anymore. "Add power now," Maya said. "Slow and smooth. Symmetric thrust." The captain pushed the throttles forward slightly. The plane responded. The nose came up more. "That's it," Maya said. "Hold that attitude. Don't try to climb yet. Just stop the descent." They were at 8,000 feet now. Then 6,000. Then 4,000. The ocean was so close Maya could see individual waves. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on, baby. Pull up." At 2,000 feet, the plane leveled out. The dive stopped. They were flying level now, just above the ocean, but they were flying. The cockpit was silent except for the sound of heavy breathing. "Oh my God," the first officer said. "Oh my God, oh my God." The captain's hands were shaking on the controls. Maya stood behind them, her own heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her chest. They had stopped the fall. But they weren't safe yet. "We need to get altitude," the captain said. He started to pull back on the column. "No," Maya said. "Not yet. First we stabilize. We need to make sure the plane is responding normally to manual inputs. If we try to climb too fast, we could stall." The captain looked at her. "Who are you?" "I flew F/A-18 Super Hornets off carriers for 12 years, Maya said. "I've dealt with control failures before. This is exactly like what we trained for during carrier approaches." "You flew fighter jets," the first officer said. "Yes. And right now, you're going to fly this plane exactly like I tell you, because your autopilot is dead and you're flying manual for the first time in probably 20 years. The captain swallowed hard. "Okay. What do we do?" "First, get on the radio. Tell ground control we're in emergency status. We need vectors to the nearest suitable airport. Then we're going to do a completely manual approach and landing. No autopilot. No autothrottle. Pure stick and rudder flying." "I've never landed a plane this big manually," the captain said quietly. "I know," Maya said. "That's why I'm here. I'm going to talk you through every step." For the next hour, Maya guided them. She stood behind the pilots, watching every instrument, calling out corrections, explaining how to manage energy without automation. "You're too fast," she'd say. "Pull back power. Small adjustments. Nose is dropping. Add a touch of trim. Watch your bank angle. Keep wings level." The pilots listened to every word. They had no choice. Their training had prepared them to fly with computers helping them. Maya's training had prepared her to fly when everything failed. She contacted ground control herself, using the cockpit radio. "This is Flight 447. We've experienced complete trim runaway and are flying manually. We need vectors to nearest suitable airport with long runway. Be advised we have no autopilot capability." The controller's voice came back, professional but tense. "Flight 447, Roger. Recommend Midway Island. Runway June 24, 7,800 feet. Distance 140 miles. Current winds 0-90 at 15 knots. Midway copies," Maya said. "Request emergency equipment standing by." In the cabin, passengers were crying with relief. They had felt the plane level out. They knew the fall had stopped. But they didn't know how close they'd come. They didn't know they were still flying on borrowed time. A flight attendant came to the cockpit door. "What's happening? Are we okay?" "We're stable," Maya told her. "Tell the passengers we're flying manually to Midway Island. Emergency landing in about 45 minutes. Have them review emergency procedures." The flight attendant looked at Maya. "Who are you?" "Just someone who knows how to fly." As they got closer to Midway, Maya started preparing the pilots for the approach. "This is going to be different from anything you've done before," she told them. "You're going to have to manage everything manually. Speed, altitude, descent rate, power settings. Everything." "I don't know if I can do this," the captain said. "Yes, you can," Maya said firmly. "I've landed fighter jets on carriers at night in terrible weather. This is easier than that. You have a long runway that isn't moving. You've got this." The captain nodded, but his hands were shaking. Maya talked them through the approach procedure step by step. "Start your descent at 15 miles out. Aim for 700 feet per minute descent rate. Watch your airspeed. If you get too slow, you'll stall. Too fast, you'll overshoot the runway." They began the descent. Maya watched every instrument like a hawk. "Power back a little. You're too fast. Nose up slightly. You're descending too quick. Good. That's good. Hold that. At 5 miles out, they could see the runway ahead. Gear down, Maya said. Flaps to landing configuration. The captain deployed the landing gear and flaps. The plane slowed and became more difficult to control. You're going to feel more pitch sensitivity now, Maya said. Small control inputs. Very small. At 1 mile out, they were lined up perfectly with the runway. You're high, Maya said. Add more flaps. Pull power back. The plane descended faster. Good. That's good. At 500 feet, the ground was rushing up at them. Power back. Flare in 3, 2, 1, now. The captain pulled back on the column. The plane's nose came up. The main wheels touched the runway with a hard thump. Then the nose wheel came down. Reverse thrust. Maya shouted. Full reverse. The captain deployed the thrust reversers. The plane shook and slowed. They were on the ground. They were safe. The cockpit erupted in voices. Air traffic control. Emergency vehicles. Ground crew. But Maya just stood there, her hands still gripping the back of the captain's seat. They had made it. All 246 people. When the plane finally stopped on the runway, the captain turned around in his seat and looked at Maya. You saved our lives, he said. His eyes were wet with tears. All of us. You saved all of us. Maya didn't say anything. She just nodded. Emergency vehicles surrounded the plane. Passengers were evacuated down the emergency slides. Many of them were crying. Some were laughing with relief. Some were still in shock. Maya tried to slip away quietly. She walked off the plane with the other passengers, hoping to just disappear into the crowd. But the captain came after her. Wait, he called. Please. We need to know your name. Other passengers turned to look. Who saved us? Someone asked. What happened? The captain pointed at Maya. Her. She saved us. She came into the cockpit and showed us how to save the plane. Everyone stared at Maya. She stood there in her jeans and sweater, looking like any other middle-aged woman, and she could feel her carefully built civilian life crumbling around her. What's your name? A passenger asked. Maya hesitated. Then she sighed. Commander Maya Chen, she said quietly. United States Navy. Retired. The word spread through the crowd like wildfire. Navy. She was a Navy pilot. She flew fighter jets. Within minutes, airport officials and investigators arrived. Then military representatives. Someone had called the Navy. An officer in dress uniform approached Maya. He saluted her. Commander Chen, he said. Your service record came up when ground control mentioned the tactical procedures you were using. Ma'am, it's an honor. Maya felt like she was in a dream. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to be anonymous. She was supposed to be nobody. The investigating team wanted to know everything. What had happened? What procedures she'd used? How she'd known what to do. She explained about the runaway stabilizer. About the manual flying techniques she'd learned in carrier operations. About how Navy pilots train for worst-case scenarios that commercial pilots never encounter. Your carrier approach procedures saved 246 lives today, an investigator told her. Commercial aviation training doesn't cover manual flying to this extent anymore. If you hadn't been on that plane. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. By the time they reached a hotel on Midway Island, news crews had arrived. The story was spreading around the world. Maya sat in her hotel room and watched the news reports on TV. They showed footage of the plane on the runway. Interviews with passengers. Everyone wanted to know about the woman who had saved them. Her phone started ringing. Her family. Her friends back in Portland. Her old Navy buddies. Her sister called, crying. You flew jets. Off aircraft carriers. Why didn't you tell me? I wanted a normal life, Maya said quietly. But you're a hero. I didn't want to be a hero. I just wanted to be normal. But normal was gone now. The next day, Maya met with the passengers. They had organized a gathering to thank her. The man who had been sitting next to her came up first. He had tears in his eyes. I have 3 kids, he said. I wouldn't have seen them again if you hadn't. His voice broke. Thank you. A woman approached holding a little girl's hand. This is Emma, she said. She's 6. Maya knelt down to Emma's level. The little girl hugged her tight. You're a superhero, Emma whispered. Maya felt her own eyes getting wet. One by one, passengers came to thank her. To tell her what she had saved them for. Weddings they would attend. Babies they would meet. Lives they would continue living. By the end, Maya was overwhelmed. She had saved 246 people. 246 futures. 246 stories that would continue because she had chosen to step forward. Part 10, Questions and Answers. Later that day, Maya spoke with reporters. The Navy had asked her to. They said it was important for people to understand what had happened. She sat in a conference room and answered questions. Why did you leave the Navy? Someone asked. I was tired, Maya said honestly. 12 years of carrier operations. I wanted peace. What went through your mind when the plane started falling? I thought about all the times I'd been in situations like that, Maya said. All the emergencies I'd dealt with. And I thought about how I was the only person on that plane who knew how to fix what was happening. Were you scared? Terrified, Maya admitted. But that's when training takes over. What do you want people to know about carrier pilots? Maya leaned forward. Navy carrier pilots train for the worst possible scenarios. We land on moving ships at night. We deal with equipment failures. That training creates skills that don't exist anywhere else in aviation. And yesterday, that training saved lives. A reporter in the back raised her hand. Will you go back to the Navy? Maya smiled sadly. No. I'm done with that life. But I'll always be a carrier pilot. That's part of who I am. When Maya finally flew back to Portland a week later, her quiet life wasn't waiting. There was a banner at the airport, Welcome Home Commander Chen. News crews were there. Her friends from the library were there with flowers. And in the crowd, standing in his dress uniform, was her old commanding officer from the Navy. Captain Williams was 70 now, retired, but he stood straight and proud. When Maya saw him, she started crying. He saluted her. You did good, Commander. I just did what I was trained to do, Maya said. That's what heroes always say, he replied. The library had organized a welcome home party. Her co-workers had made a cake. We had no idea, her boss said. You never talked about any of this. I wanted to be just a librarian, Maya said. You are a librarian, her boss replied. You're also a hero. You're both. That night, alone in her apartment, Maya looked at the things that reminded her of her Navy days. The photos she kept in a box. The medals she'd never displayed. She had tried to hide this part of herself. To pretend it had never existed. But it had. And it had mattered. She took one of the photos out of the box. It showed her in her flight suit, standing in front of her F/A-18. She was younger then. But she was still that person. She had always been that person. Maya put the photo on her bookshelf where she could see it. She wasn't going to hide anymore. 3 weeks later, the official investigation report was released. It confirmed everything. The plane had experienced a catastrophic stabilizer trim runaway. The autopilot system had malfunctioned and commanded full nose-down trim. The pilots had done everything they were trained to do. But commercial aviation training doesn't prepare pilots for completely manual flying in extreme situations. The report included a special section about Maya's actions. Commander Maya Chen, RET, utilized tactical manual flying procedures developed by U.S. Navy carrier aviation. These procedures are not part of commercial aviation training. Her specific knowledge directly resulted in the survival of all 246 passengers and crew. Without Commander Chen's intervention, Flight 447 would have impacted the ocean. There would have been no survivors. The Federal Aviation Administration announced they would be updating their training requirements. Commercial pilots would now receive additional training in manual flying and emergency procedures similar to what military aviators learn. Maya's procedures would be taught to every airline pilot in the country. 6 months after the incident, there was a gathering. All 246 passengers were invited back to Midway Island. Not a memorial for the dead. A celebration of life. Maya almost didn't go. But the passengers had written to her. They'd told her how much it would mean if she came. So she went. The gathering was held on the beach near the runway where they had landed. There was a monument now. A stone pillar with all 246 names carved into it. And at the top, it read, "On this runway, 246 souls lived because one woman stepped forward." When Maya arrived, the crowd erupted in applause. She saw Emma, the 6-year-old girl. She was 7 now. She ran up to Maya and hugged her. "I drew you a picture," Emma said, handing Maya a piece of paper. It was a drawing of a plane. And standing next to it was a stick figure with a cape. "That's you," Emma said. Maya knelt down. "You know what? I'm not a superhero. I'm just someone who practiced really hard at something. And when people needed help, I used what I'd learned." "Can I learn to fly planes?" Emma asked. "Yes," Maya said. "You can learn to do anything. If you work hard enough." The ceremony was beautiful. People spoke about what that day had meant to them. The captain of Flight 447 spoke. He was retiring from flying. "I had 28 years of experience," he said. "I thought I knew everything. But I didn't. Commander Chen knew things I'd never learned. She saved us because she had skills I didn't have. That reminds us that we should never stop learning. Never stop respecting knowledge, no matter where it comes from." Then Maya was asked to speak. She walked to the microphone slowly. She looked out at the 246 faces looking back at her. "I spent 12 years in the Navy," she began. "I learned to do something very few people ever learn to do. I learned to land jets on aircraft carriers at night in storms. I learned to deal with emergencies that would scare most people to death. And then I left. I wanted to be normal. I wanted to forget that part of my life. But 6 months ago, I learned something important. You can't forget who you were. You can't hide from the things that made you strong. Because sometimes, people need those things. Sometimes, the world needs what you know." I almost didn't step forward. I almost stayed in my seat. Because I was scared of revealing who I really was. I'm telling you this because maybe some of you are hiding parts of yourselves too. Maybe you have skills or knowledge or experiences that you keep secret. But those things are part of you. And someday, someone might need them. Don't hide. Don't be afraid to be who you really are." When she finished, there was silence for a moment. Then everyone stood. All 246 people. And they applauded. Maya looked out at them and finally understood. She hadn't lost her anonymity that day. She had found herself. Maya never went back to being invisible. She couldn't. But she learned to accept it. She still worked at the library. But now she also volunteered with veterans organizations. She helped other former military members transition to civilian life. She started speaking at schools. Talking to kids about aviation. About how hard work and training can prepare you for anything. She reconnected with her old Navy squadron. It felt good to be around people who understood that part of her life. Emma, the little girl from the plane, wrote to Maya regularly. She was taking flying lessons now. Because of you, she wrote in one letter. You showed me that women can do anything. Maya kept that letter in her wallet. The airline started using Maya's case in their training. They brought her in to speak to pilots about manual flying skills. About staying sharp. About being prepared for the impossible. And slowly, Maya realized something. She had spent 6 years trying to hide her Navy career because she thought it separated her from normal people. But it made her capable. It made her valuable. It made her someone who could save lives. 3 years after the incident, Maya received a phone call. It was from Boeing. The aircraft manufacturer. Commander Chen, we'd like to hire you as a consultant, the voice said. We're redesigning our pilot training programs. We want to incorporate more manual flying skills. Skills like the ones you used. We need someone who understands both military and civilian aviation. Maya thought about it. Then she said yes. She didn't quit her library job. She still loved that work. But 3 days a week, she worked with Boeing. Teaching pilots. Redesigning training programs. Making sure that what happened on Flight 447 would never happen again. She also started working with NASA. They were studying how military training could improve civilian aviation safety. Maya became one of their key advisors. She traveled around the world, speaking at aviation conferences. You're a legend, one pilot told her. I just used my training, Maya always said. But she was starting to understand that it was more than that. It was courage. It was the willingness to step forward when no one else could. That was what made the difference. Part 16, 7 years later. 7 years after Flight 447, Maya was at home when her phone rang late at night. It was the Navy. Commander Chen, we have a situation, the voice said. It was Admiral Peterson. I'm retired, sir, Maya said. I know. But we need your expertise. We have a pilot in trouble. She's flying an F/A-18 and experiencing control problems similar to what you dealt with on Flight 447. We're on a conference call with her right now. Can you help? Maya's heart started racing. Put me on the call. There was a click, and Maya heard the voice of a young woman. She sounded scared but controlled. This is Lieutenant Morrison. I have partial hydraulic failure. Controls are sluggish. I'm not sure I can land on the carrier deck in this condition. Lieutenant Morrison, this is Commander Chen, Maya said calmly. Do you remember me? Ma'am. The pilot's voice changed. Hope entered it. Commander Chen. Yes, ma'am. I remember you. Good. Now listen carefully. I've dealt with this exact situation before. You can land this jet. I'm going to talk you through it step by step. For the next 20 minutes, Maya guided the young pilot. She explained how to compensate for the sluggish controls. How to adjust her approach speed. How to trust her instincts. You're trained for this, Maya said. You're a carrier pilot. This is what we do. We land when things are broken. You've got this. I'm scared, the pilot admitted. That's okay. Use the fear. Let it make you sharp. Now, call the ball. Hornet, ball, 4.2, the pilot said. Maya listened to the landing signal officer's calls. She heard the roar of the jet. She heard the moment of silence. Then, tailhook caught. Good landing. Maya let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Thank you, ma'am," Lieutenant Morrison's voice came through the phone. She was crying. "Thank you so much. You did it yourself," Maya said. "I just reminded you what you already knew." After the call ended, Admiral Peterson came back on the line. "Commander Chen, you just saved another life," he said. "She saved herself," Maya replied. "You know," the Admiral said, "we could use someone like you. Not flying. But training. Teaching. Would you consider coming back? As an instructor?" Maya looked around her apartment. At her books. At her quiet life. Then she looked at the photo on her shelf. The one of her in her flight suit. "Let me think about it," she said. Part 17, The Decision. Maya spent weeks thinking about the Admiral's offer. Go back to the Navy. Become an instructor. Teach young pilots the skills that had saved so many lives. Or stay in her quiet civilian life. She talked to her family. Her friends. Her former squadron members. Everyone had opinions. But in the end, it was Emma who helped her decide. Emma was 14 now, and she was serious about becoming a pilot. She had written Maya a letter. "Dear Commander Chen," the letter said. "I've been thinking about what you told me. About finding my own path. I think I found it. I want to fly for the Navy, just like you did. I want to learn to land on carriers. But here's the thing. The Navy has good instructors. But they don't have you. And you know things that nobody else knows. You know how to stay calm when everything is falling apart. You know how to make impossible decisions. I'm not asking you to come back for me. I'm asking you to come back for all the future pilots who need to learn what you know. Because someday, one of them might be on a plane with 246 people, and they'll need to remember what you taught them. Please think about it. The world needs more people like you teaching. Not fewer. Love, Emma." Maya read the letter 3 times. Then she called Admiral Peterson. "I'll do it," she said. "But I have conditions. I keep my library job part-time. I keep my consulting work with Boeing. And I teach my way. Not by the book. I teach real-world skills. The kind that save lives." 6 months later, Maya stood in front of a classroom of naval aviator students. 20 young men and women, all of them training to fly jets off carriers. They looked at her with curiosity. "My name is Commander Maya Chen," she began. "Most of you probably know the story about Flight 447. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because the skills I used that day aren't special. They're skills that every single one of you is going to learn. Skills that might save your life someday. Or someone else's life. But here's what they don't tell you in regular flight training. It's not just about knowing the procedures. It's about having the courage to act when everyone is panicking. It's about staying calm when you're terrified. It's about trusting your training even when your instincts are screaming at you to do something else. I'm going to teach you how to fly when everything breaks. When your hydraulics fail. When your controls jam. When you have 60 seconds to live and your training is the only thing standing between you and death. Some of you won't make it through this training. It's hard. It's supposed to be hard. Because out there," she pointed toward the window, toward the sky, "it's even harder. And I'm not going to let you out there until I know you can handle it." A young woman in the front row raised her hand. "Ma'am, is it true you tried to hide your Navy career?" Maya nodded. "Yes. I wanted to be normal. I wanted to forget this part of my life." "Why?" "Because I was tired. Because this life takes everything from you. Because I wanted peace." "Do you regret coming back?" Maya thought about Lieutenant Morrison, who was still flying. She thought about Emma and the thousands of other young people who wanted to fly. She thought about the 246 passengers on Flight 447 who were alive because she had stepped forward. No, Maya said simply. I don't regret it. Because this is who I am. I tried to hide it. But you can't hide from yourself forever. And the world needs what we know. The world needs people who can fly when everything is falling apart. That's us. That's who we are. The students nodded. One of them, a young man in the back, spoke up. Ma'am, what was it like? When the plane was falling? Were you scared? Terrified, Maya admitted. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. I thought we were all going to die. So how did you do it? How did you act when you were that scared? Maya smiled. Because being scared doesn't matter. What matters is what you do while you're scared. Fear is just an emotion. Training is what saves lives. When that plane was falling, I wasn't thinking about being brave. I was thinking about the procedures. My body knew what to do because I'd practiced it 1,000 times. That's what we're going to teach you. We're going to make your training so deep, so automatic, that even when you're terrified, your body knows what to do. The students leaned forward, listening intently. This was why Maya had come back. For these young people who needed to learn what she knew. Part 19, 10 years later. 10 years after Flight 447, there was a ceremony at the Naval Aviation Museum. They were unveiling a new exhibit about carrier aviation. And one section was dedicated to Maya's story. There were photos of her from her active duty days. Pictures of her F/A-18. A video screen showing news coverage of Flight 447. And a flight suit in a display case. Maya stood looking at the exhibit, feeling strange. It's quite something, isn't it? A voice said beside her. Maya turned. It was Captain Richards from Flight 447. He was fully retired now, but he had come for the ceremony. I still can't believe they made an exhibit about me, Maya said. You saved 246 lives, Captain Richards said. You deserve more than an exhibit. I just used my training, Maya said. No, Captain Richards said firmly. You did more than that. You had the courage to step forward. Most people would have stayed in their seat. They would have thought, someone else will handle it. But you didn't. That's what makes you a hero. Not the training. The choice. Before Maya could respond, she heard a voice behind her. Commander Chen. She turned. It was a young woman in a Navy flight suit. She had pilot wings on her chest. Yes. Maya said. Ma'am, I'm Ensign Emma Rodriguez. I just completed carrier qualification last month. I wanted to meet you. You're the reason I'm here. Maya stared at the young woman. Then it clicked. Emma. Maya whispered. Little Emma from the plane. The young pilot smiled. Not so little anymore. You told me I could do anything if I worked hard enough. So I did. I'm a carrier pilot now. Just like you. Maya felt tears spring to her eyes. She hugged Emma tight. I'm so proud of you, Maya said. I wouldn't be here without you, Emma said. You didn't just save my life that day. You showed me what was possible. Other people were gathering now. Pilots. Passengers from Flight 447. Family members. Friends. The museum director stepped up to a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here today to honor Commander Maya Chen and her extraordinary service. Her actions on Flight 447 saved 246 lives. But her legacy goes far beyond that one day. She has trained hundreds of pilots. She has redesigned aviation training programs. She has inspired a generation. She has made flying safer for everyone. The director paused. Commander Chen tried to hide her military service. She tried to be just another person. But heroes can't hide. Today, we celebrate a woman who stepped forward when others would have stayed silent. We celebrate Commander Maya Chen. Everyone applauded. Maya stood there, feeling overwhelmed. All these people. All these lives she had touched. She looked around at the faces in the crowd. At Emma, now a pilot herself. At Captain Richards. At the other passengers from Flight 447, all living their lives. At the students she had trained. At the ripple effects of one choice made in 90 seconds of falling through the sky. Epilogue, the sky above. That night, Maya drove to the beach near her home in Portland. She walked out onto the sand and looked up at the stars. The same stars she had navigated by when she was flying at night over the Pacific. The same stars that had watched her land on carrier decks in storms. The same stars that had been above Flight 447 when it fell from the sky. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. A girl who dreamed of flying. A young officer learning to land on carriers. A combat pilot. A veteran trying to hide. A hero revealed. A teacher. A woman who finally accepted all the parts of herself. She had tried to be ordinary. She had tried to hide the extraordinary things she could do. But the universe had other plans. When 246 people needed her, she had stepped forward. And in doing so, she had found herself again. Her phone buzzed. A text message from Emma. There was a photo attached. Emma standing in front of an F/A-18 on a carrier deck, giving a thumbs up. The message said, "First solo carrier landing today. I thought of you the whole time. Thank you for showing me the way. The sky is mine now. Just like you said it would be." Maya smiled. She typed back, "Proud of you, Lieutenant. You earned those wings. Now go teach others what you've learned. Pass it forward." She put her phone away and looked back at the stars. The sky had been her home once. Then she had left it. But it never really left her. And when the world needed what the sky had taught her, she had been ready. She would always be ready. Because once you learn to fly when everything is falling apart, once you learn to land when landing seems impossible, once you learn to save lives when death seems certain, you can never forget those lessons. They become part of you. They become who you are. Maya Chen, the librarian. Maya Chen, the consultant. Maya Chen, the teacher. Commander Maya Chen, United States Navy. The woman who saved 246 lives. The woman who showed a little girl that anything is possible. The woman who proved that heroes walk among us, often unseen, until the moment they're needed most. She took one last look at the stars, then walked back to her car. Tomorrow, she had a class to teach. Young pilots to train. Knowledge to pass on. The sky was waiting. And she would be ready. Always ready.